cloth, like it's very believable and alive. We can see this. So can you please give us some tips and tricks about it?
Sure. Is there something particular? I mean, maybe there's some kind of comments or something like that that people might want to see, because I can talk about a bunch of things. I can talk about the forms and the anatomy, and at the same time I can
Yeah.
talk about the clothing. So whichever one. Again, if there's something people that want to see, I can definitely show that.
Okay. So guys, if you want some specific, so please comment down below. So we can start though.
Yeah, while we're waiting, if there is something that's going to pop up, it's
Yeah.
it's one of those tricks that I use. It's very simple, but there's the letter V on the keyboard. So if we press space and we press, we see those two squares, white and black. So what V does is switches between those colors. It's kind of like X in Photoshop, so it switches the selected colors. So I use this all the time. This goes back to some of the things that I talked about earlier, about the forms, about the basics, about the foundation. So how things should look like. It's what is the harmony, what is the balance, what it is, what is off. So when we have all of these things in front of us, when we have all those lines, it's very easy to lose ourselves and all of this stuff. So what I do is I make sure that I don't have any of the polypaint selected, and I just press V, and this way I can see only the silhouette. And the materials that I use, they are kind of just two of them, to be honest. There's the fast shader and the basic material, so they come with ZBrush. So I would just use fast shader, and this way I can see the silhouette. I can see how it looks, how is the balance, can this guy actually stand. And right now it doesn't look like he can stand. I think I have a different version where I fixed that. And then there's the basic material. This one allows me to see the forms just slightly. It's still mainly the silhouette, but some of the forms are kind of become visible. So if I see something where a line of the highlight is somehow wobbly or doesn't really connect, doesn't really click to me, I know that this is one of the things that I need to fix. So I would just this is the stage that I use in the middle of the production, but it's one of them that I use at the end quite a lot, when I have like a complex character, for example, like this girl right here that I haven't finished. So if I'm done with all the with everything, I would just go into T-pose mesh. That means ZBrush will take every single subtool on the lowest division level, and it will make this model into like one mesh. So this way I can move things around. I can lift something, I can make something bigger, something wider, something smaller, and so on. So for example, this is an old model of mine. I'm not even sure what year it was, but I can see that let me just turn off the displacement map here, texture. So I can see that something is off with the shoulders. It's a little bit too boxy. So that's one way to put it. So I really like the legs. I like everything that is happening here. I think it works really well. It's feminine shape, and it's kind of solid, I would say, but everything that is here, especially the shoulder area, the arms, they are just off. And the way for me to fix this is to go into T-pose mesh, select this basic shader, this one, and simply press V again, so we see only the silhouette. And this way I will just come in here and use transpose tools, use some move brushes, and probably move things into place. So that's it's a fairly simple technique, but it's you would be surprised just how many times I use it, especially when I check somebody else's work, when I'm managing something, and if I need to make sure that again the quality is as good as it can be. I simply switch to everything that kind of black, and then I just go over the model with that. in terms of actual, I guess, sculpting, there isn't many things that I use. The main one is the clay buildup. So that's just the main brush that I use, and I always start from something small, from something I would say lower quality, so somewhere from here. This way, everything that I modify here is going to be just easier for me, so I can move things in this way instead of if I compare how it moves from here. Well, it's not exactly a good comparison, but some of the details, or all of the details, I would say, if I move them on the lower subdivision level, they do not stretch, they don't get destroyed, nothing really gets broken. And if the model has more subdivisions than this one, it's going to be kind of lumpy. So if I move something, you can see there's a little like highlight outside this. So I always make sure that my models, they have subdivision levels. I want to be able to move things this way, where I don't have this kind of crazy effect out around the stroke. So all of my models are done in this way, and at the same time, not only is it good for sculpting, this is also a good foundation for everything that is going to come after that. So I can use this for low poly. I can simply modify this, and it's going to be a game ready asset. So that's another thing that I developed, because I started this whole journey as a modeler. So I was there was no ZBrush whatsoever, which is probably a crazy thing for people to hear today, but yes, there were days where ZBrush wasn't there, and all of those folds, all of those things, they had to be modeled manually inside of 3ds Max or Maya. So those are just the habits that I had, that I developed more than 10 years ago, but I use them still every day during the production. I use them daily, and I know that they work. I haven't seen anybody show me something that can beat modeling. For example, here, the stitches here, this is not because of the modeling, this is done because, not because of the modeling as such, but because I have topology, so I can use masks like this one called smart masking, so like that. So I have very precise, accurate, and I can simply use inflate. So if I inflate this to 5 like that, it's going to look awful, but if I'm going to inflate it to 0.5, I can extrude this the seam, the stitch this way, and it's going to look really accurate. So comparing that to doing the actual sculpting, there is absolutely no way sculpting can beat that. So I try to make sure that my models, they have functionality to them. They're not simply blocks of clay. They actually have some functionality that I can use for my advantage in the future. That's something that can be used to advantage when people take over my work, for example, in a studio environment, where sometimes we need to share the assets, and people can come here and they see, okay, this is actually quite easy to modify, quite easy to work with. And so I would just again, I would just make my own life a little bit easier for me, and people can take over. They can be quite happy that it's not just a big mess of things. So just something that I do. And another thing, just a small thing, but it's for those people who want to get into production. ZBrush has the folders structure now, and please use those folders. Please make sure that you well, I would say professional about those things. I mean, don't look here, I have quite a messy situation, but everything, it needs to be structured, everything needs to be inside of the appropriate folders. So when you give this model to somebody else, or if you need to go back to it and find something, you know exactly what to look for, you know exactly what is what the names are. It's I mean, for personal projects it doesn't really matter, as long as you understand yourself what is what. But when you're working with somebody else, this is crucial, because it's going to to be such a pain in the neck when you open a model and there are like 120 subtools and they are just randomly placed somewhere here, and some of them are hidden, some of them are visible, and you have no idea what is what. Like, can I unhide this? If I unhide this, is it the tool that I need? Is it going to be used? What is going on? So keep everything clean as much as you can. If something is unnecessary, just remove it completely from your tool and save it as a different version. Do not keep a folder where you have some kind of backups throughout the whole project, because the file size is going to be ridiculous. So just a little, kind of organizational skill that we don't really think about when we're starting. We just want to do some cool things, but those things actually really matter, and so it's important to have them. In terms of actual cheap tips and tricks, so this is the model that I used in for my tutorial about clothing. So I have two brushes, and I don't want this webinar to get into brushes, like what brushes I'm using, but if I want to go in there, the first brush I use is standard, and the second brush that I use is called standard, but I mean it's called cloth, but it's the standard brush that has the Alpha 37 or 38 set, so there's nothing about this brush that is special, except for probably a focal shift that is all set to 15, so it makes it a little bit tighter. And so those are the only brushes that I use for folds. So we're just kind of going here slowly, nicely, without doing anything crazy. Again, I work from those levels. I never make my folds on the highest subdivision level. I know it's just a personal preference, but I simply cannot see myself making those kind of strokes and then taking minutes just to be able to smooth them out. So I always start from somewhere low, somewhere here. And the beautiful thing about it as well is that when I work on this lower subdivision levels, what happens is that I sometimes end up having, if I go up, for example, sometimes I see a little bit of a break in forms in here, so I can actually use that in my advantage and create additional detail, additional form. So it's a really cool, not cool, but just a useful way I find to do my job. Is just start from somewhere low where I can easily create shapes. I can easily smooth them out if I need to. I can modify them easily, and the beautiful thing is that sometimes those forms, they actually leave something for me to work with if I go levels up. And clothing is something that I mentioned about some Marvelous Designer and reliability on Marvelous Designer. It's definitely a good thing. It's just that what Marvelous Designer does is creates clothing that is that has no life whatsoever. It's something that is put on the mannequin, and then it somehow should look like a real thing, which is never the case. So studying clothing, studying folds is a good thing, and we have all of the materials for now available. It's scanned data is probably the best way to study this thing, instead of using photographs like it used to be back in the day. So a lot of things that's visible here is actually manually done. It's not just a Marvelous Designer work. So I come here and I think about the tensions. I think about, okay, if this is the pocket, so probably she's putting some stuff in there, and once we move the pocket, the fabric here is going to be different. It's going to have different folds, different things. So I just kind of think about it in a sense, and I move things around. In terms of tips, that's the best tip I can give in terms of clothing. If you want to make something look kind of natural in terms of folds, I use move brush. So if I want to make something like this, for example, I would just come in here and I would simply drag some of the stuff out. Then I would take one of my brushes, the cloth brush, which is the standard brush but just a little bit tighter, and I kind of slice it in the middle, and then with a clay build-up I kind of refine it in here. And so if I move this up in subdivision levels, maybe just refine it a little bit more like that, maybe move it again, then refine it like that. And so this way I get a nice looking fold by simply using the brush, but it just needs more refinement. So something like this. It's very easy, very fast. Has this detail. This fold has a nice tightness simply because I'm just using the move brush. So that's how I use how I make a lot of my additional folds, is that I start from just moving things around instead of just cutting them immediately by using my brushes. So those are just a few tips, I guess, on the way I work. It's just always start from something small, something low, and then go a little bit higher. On something like this, which is just an insane piece of whatever it is, it has to be, it needs to look like clothing, but it doesn't look like clothing, to be honest. But if I do encounter something like that where it's quite ambiguous and it's lacking the tightness, well, first of all, I'm going to do this manually and just going to refine everything by hands. But what I would do is that I would go into inflate, which is somewhere in here. I think deformation, and I have my hotkeys, my quick panels for that. So I would just go in here and I would increase inflate, and this makes everything just a little bit tighter. I would say it kind of hides some of the wrinkles, some of the holes and all of these things. So just a quick way of getting things somewhere where I find them to be better looking, and then I just can come here and manually sculpt something out. Yeah, so I'm kind of minimalist when it comes to tools. I don't really use many tools. I think I have some. I have a couple of custom made by Selvi. This is called Selvi Fold B2. So that's an artist. You can find those brushes online. They should be free if they're available somewhere. I don't even know what the guy is up to. It's been probably, I don't know, close to 7 years or something like that when I got those brushes, but you probably can find them somewhere. But everything else is just manual work, because I don't think there is a better way of doing it. It's just manually, and yeah. When it comes to, I guess, something like anatomy, something more I don't want to say dynamic, but something that is very crucial, quite interesting, something that a lot of people struggle. It's a explanation that I have here for people that kind of new to anatomy, is that well, let me just explain the problem itself. What I see quite often is that the separation between the muscles, they're very sharp. They can be as deep as this. The shoulders, they can be as crazy defined as this. And just give me a second to unfreeze. So something like that, right? So the shapes are insanely defined. Something that you don't see ever on the actual flesh, because it's just not natural. But it is the case. I would say probably 7 out of 10. This is something that I see when people who just begin working on these things, they do. And what I suggest is that imagine if you're putting something like a layer of honey. Imagine there's like a watery, gooey honey. If you put it on top of your character, this honey will actually kind of hide those deep cuts. It will get inside of those cuts, and it will make the transition between the forms a little bit better. And that's exactly what the musculature, what the anatomy should be about. The forms of the anatomy, that's what we need. This is kind of subtle, gradual changes between things, where it's not just a muscle lying away from this muscle, it's actually the connection between this muscle and this muscle. So this connection needs to be not just a separation of those things, but it's on the one hand separation, but the important thing is that it's a connection. And so skin and fat and all of those things. That what makes those this connection look good. So those kind of cuts, I don't make them. I stay away from them, and I would just fill those gaps in with again, imaginary honey or something like oil, whatever, just something that fills those gaps with. And one way to check the forms much better is to use some of the materials that we have inside of ZBrush. A lot of what you see here is I got them, but the one that I use is called Flat Sketch, and what it does is it creates some cavity on the model, and this way we can see the forms and the details much better. And if something is lacking, something is missing, I come in here with the standard brush and I simply increase the volume of the muscle. And if you look at this area here, so I made a stroke, and all of a sudden you see the highlight, you see a little bit of shadowing in there. So that's a really cool way for me to check my forms. So if something is a little bit too subtle, I come in here and I slowly, using the standard brush, I create a few strokes, and you can see how the shadow starts to appear. But this shadow is not created through the damn standard brush like that, like this cut. It's actually very, very subtle change of volumes with me using the standard brush on very low intensity and just checking those volumes using the fast sketch shader. So if something like this is required, where it's just anatomy that I'm working on, the hands or arms, legs, doesn't matter, whatever the character has without the clothing, this is how I would check the forms. And here you can see those little subtle striations of the shoulder. You can see a little bit of shadowing, a little bit of cavity in here, but it's very subtle, exactly how I like my muscles, my anatomy to look like. I don't want them to be screaming like, look at me, I'm so developed, I've been in the gym for 10 years. I want it to be nice and kind of fleshy. That's the goal for me when it comes to anatomy. And the worst thing is when I need to make, or when I see models that are just it looks like there's absolutely nothing other than the muscles. There's no skin, there's nothing going on between the skin and the muscles themselves. It's just something that is so sharp, it's just so boring. It's almost like looking at the anatomy muscles, but anatomy is kind of boring. It's just mechanical things, just muscles contracting and relaxing. That's it. That's the whole anatomy. So if what you see is just purely mechanical side of things, it's going to be boring. So what I like is I like to fill it with something natural, something that is kind of fleshy, a little bit of fat here and there, a little bit of interesting things that perhaps don't really make sense. For example, his hands, they're all bumpy. There are a bunch of things in here, like this one, I have no idea what it is. It's some kind of bump. It doesn't make any sense. There shouldn't be any bone in here, but it is in my case. It's I think it's working. Same here, just a bunch of soft tissue that I can pull out even more, and it's yeah, it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun. It's to me that's much more interesting than just to have something that is looking this way. You know, it's yeah, it's an abdomen. I can see that you've been working on your core quite a lot, but it's not what I look for when I make something. So same here for the legs. It's just a bunch of just a bunch of forms, just a bunch of kind of spheres with just a little bit of fat underneath that I come and I slowly with the standard brush, I just emphasize, I make something stick out a little bit more, then come in here and use a little bit of well, kind of straighter lines to make the bones. And so that's how I approach the anatomy. Another thing in terms of my techniques, if somebody wants to know about those things, I have a hotkey set to replay last. I think it's somewhere in the stroke. yeah, if you go to the stroke menu, there's modifiers and replay last. This is a very cool thing because sometimes when I am working on something that is subtle, and I want to perhaps increase the intensity. So imagine if I want to make this muscle a little bit more pronounced, but I'm working with a subtle stroke. So what I've just done here is I put a stroke. So the next thing for me, if I want to intensify this, is to put another stroke. But instead what I can do is I can press, and I set it to hotkeys, Shift R, and it's going to repeat last. So what it does is just repeating the same stroke, and so this way, without placing another stroke, I can simply, using the hotkey, can intensify something. But again, this depends on the way you work. I personally work very, I would say, subtly. I don't make any extreme forms, so I slowly build something. Not as slowly as this one, definitely. It's just me being precious about it, but I certainly don't have the intensity that some artists out there they use. So for me, this kind of stuff, especially on perhaps situations like those ones that we barely can see, but they are there, because if I press the select the fast sketch, well, some of them at least are there, but on the other material you can barely see them. But once this character is lit, once it's somewhere inside of a proper lighting environment, you will definitely see those situations. So if I'm working on something like that, I would just come in here with a standard stroke and then just Shift R, and I increase it this way quite quickly, like that. So I use it for a lot of things. It's not just that. I use it for clothing, if I'm making some kind of seam, if I'm making something that needs precision and I don't want to repeat this precision again, kind of going all the way across the model like that, I can simply press the repeat last, which is, for me, it's Shift R. So this way I can get this detail out. Has there been any questions so far?
Yeah, we have some questions.
Cool.
So, from Himanshu Ganguly, my questions will be around three things: divide, remesh, and dynamis. If you can explain these three in brief, and I want to know your process when you create a rock or cave in one environment. Like, what is the best way to approach someone is working on game or movie environment? Like, if I take the base mesh from Maya, which one of the above can give me better result? I have tried with divide, but I doesn't do it equally. That one issue I am facing. So which one of the above does it properly? And if I have unwrapped the UV in Maya and want to use displacement map inside ZBrush, will it work if I use Dynamis or Remesh?
To be honest, I have no idea what the question just meant. Is it possible to compose it somehow for a shorter version? What I understood is something about Maya, something about ZRemesh, about displacement. What is the issue? Could you summarize this as, like, what is the issue? Because it just sounded very random to me.
You want some brief from you, like divide, remesh, and dynamis is facing some problem with three in this process.
Remesh and dynamesh.
Yeah. Remesh and dynamis.
Yeah, okay. So I'm guessing remesh and ZRemesh and dynamesh, they're quite different. I mean, dynamesh is something that just breaks everything, breaks topology. Yeah, and ZRemesh is just creates topology. Okay, I'm going to guess about the question because it's still a bit random. ZRemesh is something that I occasionally use. I don't really. It depends on the model. It's if it's a creature and there is no base mesh for it, then definitely I would just create.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupt, Alexander.
Yeah.
Just a second. Himanshu, can you please explain the question? Actually, we didn't understand your question. So, can you please
Is it
explain your
possible?
question?
Is it possible for me to see those comments? Maybe if I just read them, it's going to be
Yeah, sure,
okay.
definitely.
So where is it
Send it
exactly?
to you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so here's the question. My question will be around three things: divide, remesh, and dynamesh. If you can explain those three in brief, and I want to know your process when you create a rock or cave in one environment. Like, what is the best way to approach when someone is working on game or movie environment? Like, if I take the best base mesh from Maya, which one of above can give me better result? I've tried with divide, but it doesn't do it equally. That's one issue I'm facing. So which one of the above does it properly? And if I unwrap the EMU, what? I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand, but just there are so many different things. Divide, remesh, dynamesh. If I use base mesh for rock or cave, if I use displacement, yeah, I have no idea what you mean. I'm sorry. If you can explain this, maybe. Will it work if I use dynamesh or remesh? I don't know. I guess yes. If you want to give me an answer, it's too random.
No problem. We can move for the next question. The next question is from Mohammed. If you can demonstrate on leg anatomy, can you demonstrate in leg anatomy some tips and tricks on leg anatomy?
Sure. So one thing, to get back to my model, what you can see here, and this is something that ZeroMesher will not always do. Just I'm kind of still trying to answer the previous question because I feel bad about not understanding it. It might be something to do. Just to get back to the previous question, is that I'm not an environment artist, so I don't really make caves and rocks that often. I mean, I can definitely make rocks. It's something that I had in my experience, but it's maybe that I simply do not understand the process of the environment production, art production. That's why it's a little bit confusing to me. But yeah, I'm going to get back to anatomy, something that I'm a little bit more familiar with. So what I have here is that all of my models, they are nicely organized inside of themselves. So what I have here is a few things broken up, and ZeroMesher, for example, will struggle to make such clean cuts, right? It will try to create some kind of spirals, and if you have spirals on your model, this is something that needs to be removed. This is something that you will see people complain about in video games and film. Not complain, but riggers do not like those kind of things who make skinning. So what I have here is a clean topology, and then I come in here, and because the legs, for example, they are next to each other, so for me to, instead of masking them out every single time, I've broken everything apart, and it's a nice clean cut. So what I can do is I can come in here and work on the on this leg, for example. So things about the legs is that well, I guess the way you kind of break it apart, or the way I would break it apart, is that I would look at 4 forms. This one in the middle, and this one on the side, and this one on the side. So this one on the side goes all the way from the butt, and the thing to know about this muscle is that it doesn't end as low as the one in the middle, so it always ends somewhere a little bit higher. And in terms of the actual way of making them, I would again start from somewhere low, somewhere probably as low as this subdivision level. I would come and I would use a bunch of clay buildup in here, just to define the actual muscle, like that. Then switch, because I have everything on my hotkeys. I switch between the brushes on the fly, and I cut things, I add things. Then I come here again, just those 4 elements that I've mentioned. That's how I would approach it. I would just start from here, then I would smooth out a few things so it's not so messy. Come in here, and one brush actually I forgot to mention that I do use sometimes, and I use it specifically on the legs and on the arms, because the muscles that those things have, they're quite tricky to make. So the muscles I'm talking about are those ones. I tend to struggle with them a little bit. So what I use for them is it's a modification of I think it's a layer brush. So if we press BL, it's going to be layer, and it works kind of this way. So what I have is I have a brush called, let me see what it's called. I think it's called Muscle. Yeah, it's called Muscles and Muscles 2. I have no idea what's the difference, but let's try Muscle 2. So what it does is it kind of, well, if I emphasize this, it's not exactly a round stroke. It's actually a little bit the sides are a little bit squared off. And if I'm not mistaken, if I go to my brush and if I go into my curve, sorry, not curve, my depth, you can see that the depth is different from the standard. So what it means is that some of this, the way the brush works, it will fill in some of those cavities. So it's not going to be just creating stroke on the surface, like for example standard brush. So if we go and compare, this is standard depth and this is muscle brush depth. So what it will do, it will create a nice solid stroke, but everything that is kinda has this cavity in it, it will fill it in. So this allows me to come in here and just use it quite a lot on the same surface. So I can come in here and do this, but the strokes, as you can see, they maintain solid and clean. So instead of using, for example, clay buildup like that, where everything becomes a mess, with this brush, I simply use as many strokes as I need in order for this muscle to look good. It's a kind of like, I guess, somewhat of a shortcut to get the same result. It can definitely be created using standard brushes, but this is just something that I use. I'm pretty sure this is a modification of the layer brush. Actually, by the way, if I look at it, it's not the layer brush that I modified. I think it's the clay brush that I modified. If I look at the thumbnail, I can see that it's not layer. So it's probably what I did there is I selected the clay brush and I probably just modified the depth to something else, and so that's how I created this this brush. And so using the brush, I would come in here, I make sure that I don't do anything crazy in terms of the well, I don't invent some muscles, and instead of just well, I use the knowledge that I do have about anatomy, and I create some things like that. This is again works just as well here, because the muscles, they're quite similar. They functionally they do exactly the same thing. Some of them are here for the fingers to lift up, and the ones in the back for the fingers to kind of move down, I guess. Well, not the fingers, but the feet, not the fingers. So same situation here. I can come and use this brush here, and I can use this brush to make this little muscle for the pinky, which is a nice little touch. And yeah, I know I'm talking about the arms, and you're asking about the legs, but those muscles, they're quite similar, and the process is exactly the same. So in here, then I would look for this shape as well. It's the one that connects. If I won't be able to hide his belly, but imagine if the bone of the well, here I am not knowing the name of the bone that is right here, but the bone is kind of sticking out somewhere there, and the muscles are connecting to that thing. So that's another shape that I look for when I make on my leg anatomy. And it's just again, it's just a matter of using very subtle strokes, then smoothing it out. This is probably a bit too much of a subdivision level for me. I would come here, so level 4, something like that, and I would just very subtly work on that, and then I would use the modified standard brush with a little bit tighter. I would make this tightness, and one thing to see is that once I make a cut like that, if I use just a standard brush, the way it works is that it has a little bit of kind of sharp fall off. So if I make this kind of cut, the transition between this form and this form is too sharp for me. It's almost like here the side of the stroke is almost like just a flat plane. So what I do in here, if I do use standard brushes, I would come with a clay buildup, and I would work outside of the stroke. So I'm blending this form with the stroke and the other form. So I would just gently polish it this way. So now the transition is smooth, and obviously I'm not working this way when I do something professionally. It's not like I'm sitting with a microscope and taking my time. It just at this point it's a matter of kind of habit. I make my strokes very quickly. I would say it's just a muscle memory at this point. So just by removing some of the sharpness that the standard brush created, and then polishing it with a little bit of a clay buildup, if I zoom out, you can see just how tight and just sharp this detail really is. But it's not because of not because of this effect, of the damn standard effect. It's actually because the transition between the forms is so tight and so kind of precise that the shadowing, the silhouette of the muscle is more natural. At least to me, it's more tight, it's more natural. So that's how I make everything on my models, on my on my anatomy. Just using those techniques, kind of again blending things a little bit better. Just making sure that when I make a stroke make a cut with a standard brush, I take care of the follow that the brush naturally gives. And it's a technique that people use in I think in I know that they use it in drawing, but I can't draw. I don't draw anything, but it's this technique of crosshatch, I guess it's called. So when people want to shadow something with a pencil, they would come and do that. So that's exactly what I use for my sculpting, even though like I said, I cannot draw. So it's just something that I naturally understood that works. If I'm making a muscle, I would come in here, and I would very subtly create those kind of strokes, and then I would rotate the model, and I would just do from the other side like that. And again, I'm making the strokes very rapidly. At this point, it's just my memory, my muscle memory is taking care of everything for me. So once I have something like that, it's more gradual. The form itself is very smooth. It's very clean. I have no lumpiness in here because I'm kind of attacking it from different directions. And then the goal here is to make it as even as possible, and then I just come in here and I smooth it out, and so this crosshatch effect disappears, but the volume is maintained. So that's how I would make my muscles. But in terms of the actual anatomy, in terms of how I make my anatomy on the legs, the way I make it is that I look at the pictures of the anatomy and then I make it. At this point, it's just a matter of developing the memory and creating a bunch of characters where you have the anatomy and you just memorize where things are, and it really helps. The anatomy books are useful for me is because they teach you the mechanics of the anatomy. That's the important things. The most important thing about the anatomy in terms of how the muscles are placed and why they're placed in such a way is because every single muscle has a function, and the way the muscle works is that it contracts and then it relaxes. So if this muscle, if you know that this muscle is here to make the the leg go that way, it's purely mechanical, right? You will know that the muscles, because they don't have anything except for one tendon, and they contract, the vector of them is going to be this way. And so if you know they connected somewhere here to the bone of the lower leg, for the leg to go up like that, well, I mean, when the leg is bent in the first place and then you kind of straighten it out, you will know how the muscle should be placed. You know that this muscle, for example, it cannot go somewhere here, like the vector of the muscle cannot be somewhere here, because if you continue, the vector is going to connect somewhere here. So it has absolutely no functionality now whatsoever. Instead, it needs to go all the way down right here, grab this bone, and then just kind of moves the lower part of the leg. Same here about those muscles in here, the way they connect and all of that. Same. I have no idea what it is. Oh yeah, it's a little bit of fat. Yeah. Same thing with those muscles. Once you understand that those here in the front, they are connected to the fingers, you will not make them go somewhere here. Well, this one in the middle actually does go somewhere here, but not the ones in the front. So this is why anatomy is important. It's understanding what is happening inside of the flesh. So you don't have the forms kind of shooting in the wrong direction. You simply it simply allows you to put the forms in the right place with the right angles and all of those things. And then once you understand the mechanics, once you know what they do, you can come and just modify them. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller, you can make them lumpier, you can make them cleaner, and all those things. But the foundation of them, the foundation has to be there, and anatomy is the foundation of what is happening with the character. So that's why it's also important to know anatomy, so you can just kind of get rid of those problems where some muscles, especially on the legs and on the arms, where the muscles are simply detached. Like, please ignore this thing, that's just something that I've made. This is much better, but this is also that happened during the class. Here's me being perfectionist. So once you again know the mechanics behind the forms, you simply will not be able to make something that is kind of offset, that some muscles are lying somewhere here, the other muscle is lying somewhere there, and they just have a big gap between them. Once you understand the mechanics, you will simply remove this effect. You will simply remove this issue. When everything starts all of a sudden it becomes mechanical, it becomes natural. You know that the things have to connect because all of them, they have function, and then they all kind of work together in some harmony. So that is why knowing mechanics is very crucial, and it also helps with studying the reference. So if you open a scan data, or if you open an image of a bodybuilder and you look at the image itself, people are different, right? People are different, in all kinds of ways, and as well as the physical way. So someone might have a little bit of a kind of different shape of a muscle, but and there might be a case where a person is posing and he's kind of subtly flexing something. So when you see this on the image, you might go without the knowledge of the mechanics, you will start to copy what you see on the reference on the image, but it doesn't mean that what you're copying is actually natural. It might be simply that this is what happened during the photo shoot. It might be one moment when something kind of slipped off. One of the muscles got flexed and the other one got relaxed, and you might memorize this and you go, okay, this is how the anatomy should look like. But in reality, the anatomy is always the same. It always has functionality. That's why it's so important to know it, and that's why it's so easy to understand anatomy, is because it's functionality, and functionality is the easiest thing to understand. The artistic side of things is definitely harder, but to have some kind of foundation, it's good to know your anatomy. It's going to be the foundation for everything else to jump from. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. So we have another question
Sure.
Question from Mangsu. Since you talk about learning manual way to sculpt, not to just depend on marvelous designer, what is the way to approach when I am sculpting one bedsheet? Like how to approach those folds area on top of the mattress is how to work on that wrinkle.
On top of the mattress?
Yeah,
Wait, you mean like a bed mattress?
yeah, bed mattress or like bed sheets, like this kind of.
Since just let me just read this quickly. Approach when I'm sculpting one bed sheet, like how to approach those folds areas on top of the mattress edge, how to work on the wrinkles. Gotcha. So the way you work on those wrinkles is you take your brush and you start working. Moving on. No. So those kind of things. Let's see. Make polymesh. Divide. So if this is the edge, if I understood you correctly, and you want to make some kind of folds on the edges, well, what helps here is to just look for some reference. I'm not, by the way, if I said something about Marvel's Designer in some kind of bad way, I didn't mean to. Marvel's Designer is amazing. It's just that I wouldn't rely on it as a 100% result from what we do. To me, it's mostly like 70%. That's probably the max of what Marvelous does for me. Everything else is manual work. That's how I see it. But Marvelous will definitely give you an amazing base. By the way, I'm not even making any folds here. Just sculpting something. So Marvelous will give you a great foundation, and you can definitely start to analyze those things, start to analyze those wrinkles. And since you are an artist, it means that you have a taste. There's something about you that makes you see things differently from other people, and you can distinguish what is looking better than the rest, I guess. So you can look for those wrinkles, and you can look at the reference, and eventually you will start to pick up some kind of patterns that actually look good and some patterns that don't really look good. So the best way to do this is to study folds from classical painters or sculptors, but it doesn't really matter. Both of those professions, they are amazing, because those people, they didn't rely on Marvel's Designer. They were using manual work for those kind of things. But because they were artists, they weren't just copying things. They were copying things, but they were trying to make them look as good as they can be. So you can definitely study some of this stuff and pick up, like mentally. You will develop a certain library inside of your head where you have certain patterns, certain folds that look this way and just look that way. So that's one way to do this. But another kind of shortcut is to use some photographs. So for example, I have this brush. It's called Wrinkles, and it has this alpha. So this is something that I found online, and I cut it out and just simply created a brush where I have my stroke set to this thing, and then I have my alpha set to this thing. So what I do with this brush is I go subdivision levels down, something, let's say like that perhaps, and then I would just drag this thing across. And before I do that, I would store a morph target. So if we go somewhere here, okay, here we go. So I would store morph target, and then I would just drag this without worrying too much about how it affects everything else. What I'm worrying right now, whether the folds that I do like are in the right place. So I would just spend some time in here just moving things around, right? Just dragging things and kind of seeing, okay, I think I like it this way. So I would just leave it this way, and if there was something outside of those detail that I did like previously, I would just come with my morph brush and I would just remove everything that I don't need with this brush this way. And so the reason why I do it on such a low subdivision level is that once I move up, not only this cleans up the photograph, which is not a good quality resolution, but it also creates a bunch of noise on the surface, and this noise can be used for me to come here and use my tools and just again move things a little bit and kind of create some maybe some folds, some wrinkles, modify this one a little bit, cut here, do that. I mean, I need to have some kind of model. It's really strange for me to make a cylinder made out of clothing, but that's how I would approach this. It's a little technique that I use every now and then when I want some additional folds that I'm not sure how to make, but I would just use this photograph, and then my memory again kicks in, and I start to just remember, okay, this is what I saw somewhere. I think this fold should look somewhat like that, and I would come in here and I would just add some gravity. I would add some flaring out from the folds. I would add some kind of cuts, and so on. Anything else? Any other questions? Because I do like answering the questions more than just talking about my things.
We have last questions. Question from Srinivas Ghanama. In the game art industry, is it better to master a particular specialization, like only character or environment or props, or else is it better to have decent amount of knowledge on all of them?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's tricky because I feel like there was a time where, when I started, it was a situation where people knew kind of everything, and specializing was not an option because we simply needed to know like all of the things about the production. Then there was the time where I think it's kind of starting to fade out, where we could specialize and do just something like the preposition here is that we could do characters, and then we probably could do just props. What's going to happen in the future, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. The optimization of things, some technology that is going to appear, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. So the way I look at the characters and the way I kind of develop the character art skills is that I can do, just by doing characters, I can do pretty much everything. Obviously there's a lot of technical things that involve in, for example, environment art production. So the first question that I still don't really understand, that might be the case where I don't know what the person means because it's too technical. But in terms of execution, every single character that I made, not everyone, but a lot of them, I would say. So let me just unhide some things if my ZBrush doesn't crash. So my characters, they have things on them. So this character, for example, has a crossbow, and this thing is actually a low poly, but I have a model somewhere that is high poly. So all of this stuff is modeled. None of this is sculpted. Every single detail here is modeling that I did inside of 3ds Max. So what this allows me is, it allows me to be flexible when it comes to what I can do, right? If I need somehow to do environment, I have the skills of sculpting, I have the skills of using my brushes. If it's something that I need to do as a prop artist, I can rely on my modeling, and I can rely on the my knowledge about what makes certain props better, because I did model things. I did pick up a few references. I used my taste, what reference I liked more, so I can do that. So in terms of what you should do, whether you should specialize or be a jack of all trades, I would say start with something that is focused and something that is that you genuinely enjoy. So if it's something that if you feel something towards characters, something you can't even explain what it is, right? Because I can't really explain to you why I'm making characters. My explanation to that is because I like well, I like just the way people look. I like aesthetics, I like fashion, I like psychology, I like philosophy, I like everything that is going on inside of a human. But that's not exactly an explanation of why I'm making art of that, right? Because I can be a writer and I can just describe things. I can be a drawer and just make something. But for some reason I like characters, so there's something inside of me saying that this is my thing. I really enjoy doing that. So if you have some kind of unexplainable drive towards something, I would say go with that. Don't question, just go with that and be a master of that, because I do know people who were kind of struggling. They were thinking, okay, I like characters, but there's a lot of work when it comes to characters, because there's skin, there's anatomy, there's hair, there's eyes, there's all kinds of things, right? And they have accessories, they have clothing, so it's just so much to learn. Like making characters is not an easy job. It's actually quite a few disciplines that is packed inside of a character. So the person decided to go. And by the way, if he's listening, hello, you know who you are.
Yeah.
But that was a joke. So he decided to go with the props, right? And every time that we talk, and he's a friend of mine. Every time that we talk, he kind of goes back to this thing, like, so what about the characters, like, where do you think the character is going to go, character art? So I see him still struggling, like, whether it's going to be characters or props. Should he stay in the prop creation, or should he go back to characters? And to me is that whatever that you felt in the first place, whether it was environments, whether it was props, whether it was characters, I would say just stick with that. Select it and stick with that. Be disciplined about it. Do not be swayed by some new technology that appeared, and all of a sudden the environments that can be a little bit better looking. If you can stick with the characters and you can develop yourself to some kind of mastery, you can definitely switch after that. There's nothing wrong with switching positions. There's nothing wrong with going from one discipline to another. It's just that, to me, mastery has to be achieved first, because otherwise it's just lack of discipline and just kind of being lost. It's not completing something, just abandoning it and going to another thing. So I would say go with your gut feeling, because in terms of future, what it holds for everybody, not just characters but for everybody, I have no idea. Because I can tell you that for prop creation, it's going to be something that is going to be based on scan data. That's my idea. But the same thing is going to happen with character art. I have zero doubt that there's going to be a tool that allows you to create characters, and I know how to make it. I don't know how to make it in terms of coding, how to technically achieve it, but in terms of creating this kind of system, this is not a problem at all. It's I think the reason why it's not there on the market yet is simply because there is no it's just not effective in terms of cost. I think it's just at this point it's not financially reasonable, but it's going to happen. And I think Unreal Engine, Epic Games, they are probably going to be the guys who are going to introduce something crazy, because they have a lot of money, so they can do a lot of things. And Unreal Engine is becoming this kind of hub where you can do everything inside. You can use scan data in there. There's mega scans from Quixel. You can do all kinds of things in there, so I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with some kind of system that allows you to create characters as well. So in terms of future and what it holds for everybody, no idea. I have no idea. There might be some kind of crazy tech that is being developed at this point, and so we might all go like, oh my god, so what's now? So I would say for now, stick with what you feel towards to. Stick with what your gut is telling you. If you listen to it, you will understand that there's something that you should pick up, and just master that. It's a good thing to know that you're a master of something, where you feel confident, even though every single time I start a character, I kind of go a little bit cringy, it's like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to make this. I mean, when I started this girl, I had no idea how I'm going to make her, because I don't really draw, I can't really paint, so all of this stuff had to be created almost like on the fly. It's almost like playing jazz. Things just fall on her. inside from my head, kind of during the process. So it's not exactly something that I have ease towards. To still kind of just a little bit of anxiety, I would say, but I still, at the same time, I do feel like I'm decent to do, and it definitely feels good because it opens up a lot of things for you in terms of what you can do, and just a good thing to have, some kind of confidence that you actually developed something inside of you by yourself. You put all this time, all this effort, all this discipline. You weren't I'm not sure how to say it. You weren't kind of pushed into some other direction. You stuck with what you chose. That's definitely a good thing to have. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but well, I hope I did somehow.